What's the official time on the? There, okay. Thank you.
We are started. Good afternoon, thank you.
Welcome to the December 5th meeting of the Kent County Planning Commission. I'll call the roll. Jim Saunders. Here. Ray Strong. Here. Paul Ruge. Bill Crowding. Here. Paula Reeder.
Here.
And I'm Francis Hickman, Chair. If Sean comes, he hasn't indicated not, we'll add him to the minutes when he does arrive. Before us, we have the minutes of the November 7th meeting. I hope everyone's reviewed them. If they have any additions, corrections, or comments before we submit these for the record.
Any difference I got is I wasn't here for that meeting.
Okay.
They got me in there, that's all.
Okay.
Oh, I was online.
You were online?
I was reached out in the beginning, so that's fine.
Okay. All right.
Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Our first application today is the application of 153 Mason Solar, major subdivision plan preliminary. Is that applicant or the representative here? Or the staff, excuse me, sorry, Mark, I already jumped ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Carpenter, Associate Planner with the county. As you were mentioning, we have MDL 153 Mason Solar LLC has before you an application for preliminary site plan review. It had undergone a concept review, received the comments you guys had presented, went before the Board of Appeals with your recommendations. With that appearance, it also submitted some additional items, which I had listed in the staff report. They included a revised landscape buffer that included a 3-foot berm and varied placements of the proposed vegetation. They also included renderings from 2 site points with the plants presented at the time of planting and also after 5 years of growth. They provided a glare analysis for the proposed project and a line of sight analysis. Went for the Board of Appeals. They did grant the special exception on August 19th, 2024, with the following conditions: that the applicant provides evidence that glare and reflection on adjacent property shall not interfere with traffic or create a safety hazard; that the applicant demonstrates the proposed energy system will not interfere with the view of or from the sites of significant public interest, in particular Mount Pleasant United Methodist Church, and their proposed development integrates into existing landscape. An irrigation plan or vegetative maintenance agreement should be submitted, and the berm shall be raised to 5 feet instead of 3 feet. In regards to site plan review requirements, we have these following comments. The proposal is consistent with the goals of the Kent County Comprehensive Plan, promoting sustainable building practices and providing an effective renewable resource energy strategy. It's consistent with the general intent and use of design and environmental standards found in the Land Use Ordinance. Internal traffic is anticipated to be minimal and will be restricted maintenance of equipment. There are no known unreasonable demands of public service infrastructure. No sewage or refuse disposal are proposed. Noise is anticipated to be very limited and inaudible off-site. Stormwater management plan and erosion and sediment control plan have been submitted and are under review. Submission and approval of sureties for sediment erosion control and stormwater management is required for the final site plan approval. No existing vegetation is to be removed. They're proposing 6-foot wide landscape buffer that will surround the solar array. A forest delineation and forest conservation plan have been submitted and meet the required standards. In regards to the countywide standards for utility scale solar energy systems, we have the following comments. They're meeting the required setbacks. They're meeting a great quantity of the number of general notes. Those include sort of solvents that might be used, disposal of panels and such. It also includes about wiring. It should be underground. There should be no overhead wiring across roadways. The site plan does show some things very different. In our discussion at Technical Advisory Committee, there was the issue of whether or not there were limitations for connectivity and whether or not the requirements of Delmarva would mean they would not be able to put these underground. So that was something that was yet to be resolved, and hopefully will be will be addressed today. The array will be included in a fence, which will be securely locked. The previously submitted glare analysis determined that a small section of the Fairley Road will be subject to glare exposure for westbound traffic for a 5-minute window in the evenings between September and March. Analysis at that time was based on a landscape buffer with an installed height of 6 feet ground level. They submitted a revised glare analysis with the 3-foot berm and 8-foot plantings. With that particular arrangement, it was found that there'd be no glare on the roadway as had been previously found. With the addition of the 5-foot berm, that was to be increased height at the time of planting as well. As mentioned before, they're providing 60-foot wide landscape buffer. In that buffer, they're including swells on either side of the berm with some check dams. On the northern side of the array, rather than the berm, they're proposing a swale with check dams. On that particular side, you'll note that there's a pretty forested area between the proposed array and the next property, which can help with the screening. The previously submitted renderings have an 8-foot high evergreens, top 3-foot berm. Again, they are updating this to a 5-foot. And includes analysis of the perspective mount to Pleasant United Methodist Church, and the indicated proposed energy system will not be visible from this viewing location. A proposed method of watering or watering schedule have not been submitted. Staff recommends that a vegetative management plan similar to that provided in a previous application by this energy firm be provided in this case as well. A forest and delineation forest conservation plan been submitted, meet the requirements. A forest conservation deed restriction of 1.39 acres is proposed, and approval of deed of forest conservation easement agreement is required for a final site plan review. They will need to provide sureties for landscape, and also need to provide decommissioning plan and bonding for that portion of the project. Staff does recommend granting approval, preliminary approval for the site plan. And in order to receive final site plan approval, the applicant must address and or submit the following items. Submission and approval of a vegetative management plan that addresses the requirements established within the land use ordinance. Submission and approval of the deed of forest conservation easement and agreement. Approval of erosion, sediment control, and stormwater management plans. Submission and approval of sureties for sediment erosion control and stormwater management. And submission and approval of sureties for landscaping maintenance and bond-related requirements for decommissioning as listed in the land use ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any,
No correspondences have been received.
great, thank you. Now to the applicant. Is the applicant here or their representatives? Thank you.
Good afternoon.
If you're going to testify, you raise your right hand as the testimony. You're about to give the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
And your name and address for the record.
My name is Ted Hastings. I'm an associate with Becker Morgan Group out of Salisbury, Maryland. That is 312 West Main Street, Salisbury, Maryland.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. Carper, thank you for such a in-depth staff report. He pretty much covered all the bases in there that what we've done. You've seen this before. When we first came in front of you, there was no berm. You asked for the berm. The Board of Appeals asked for an increased height of the berm. We have provided that. Also with that, you'll see there's some minor swales on each side of the berm. Also helps with a little bit of the water distribution and getting the water out of the site, because when you put a berm up, obviously it captures water. We made allowances for that with the berms. We put some check dams in there so you don't get concentrated flows off the site. This site's actually, the way it's going to be built is actually going to reduce the runoff from the site from what's currently there. So if there's a flooding problem, I think it was brought up before, there are some occurrences of a flooding problem at that intersection of Fish Hatchery Road and Fairley Road. This is going to help that a little bit. I mean, it's not going to make it worse by all means. The site layout itself has not changed since we've been here last. And since we've been here last, we actually, on November 21st, held a public outreach meeting. That was in Fairley as well at the Salem United Methodist Church. Did have a couple people show up. I think the 2 people that actually showed up from the community were from the church, so we had a lengthy conversation with them. I think it left relatively well, but it's nice to have that community outreach, and we try to do that with every one of our projects. We have been through another technical advisory committee meeting, I believe that was the 13th. So from that meeting, there's no objections from the State Highway Administration. Health Department didn't have any objections. The Office of Emergency Services had no objections. Office of Finance had no comments. You already been told the Board of Appeals has granted the special exception, so this is now allowed use because we went through that process. Mark has also brought up that we had another glare study done showing there's no glare coming off this property. The one thing that is a little outstanding is the landscaping plan. We are going to be submitting, it's actually in the process of being prepared right now, a vegetative maintenance plan that's going to be submitted and approved by the county. That will be in place prior to us coming back to you for the final approval. There's the Delmarva power lines. Our plan right now shows the lines going over Fairley Road. You do have an ordinance saying the lines cannot be crossing Fairley Road. We're showing those as, because they're not installed as of yet, but as my understanding, and John may correct me here, but it's my understanding those would be owned and installed by Delmarva Power. So I'm not sure what agreements you have with Delmarva Power, whether they're allowed to do that or not. But the point of interconnection is actually going to be right outside the entrance, tying into Delmarva Power. But Delmarva Power is going to be installing some lines and some poles for us to interconnect to. And that's pretty much my presentation. I'll be more than happy to field any questions. I have Mr. John Shields with Pivot Energy here as well to answer questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant or the staff? In your landscape plan, would you present at the next step, the renderings we had talk about with the berm and the trees at 5 years?
Yes.
And my concern, I know there's sureties, but we've talked about this in others, is that we get these trees to grow without the county. So have you thought about irrigation?
We have thought about irrigation. It's going to be part of a contract with a landscape, whoever, I guess a nursery or whoever's going to be providing those services to keep those watered properly. I think actually tying in and actually having on-site irrigation is probably not going to happen for a project of this size because it's a smaller project. And it can easily be handled by an outside source and just being contracted with a nursery to be able to do that, a landscape architect.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? If not, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to this application? Hearing none, it's back up here. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, come forward, sir. Can you raise your right hand? Is the testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. State your name and address, please.
Richard J. O'Connor, I live at 9259 Fairley Road.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I think I want to bring up something that wasn't previously brought up. If you look at the plot of where this is, there is a,
Sir, maybe they move that mic a little closer so that the public can hear. That's good, probably.
okay. If you look at the plot here, at the back side, there's a wood's edge. It's a tree line. It's about 20, 25 feet deep. Immediately behind it, there's a housing project about 20, 25 feet in from the edge, wood's edge. There are families there. Now, that puts, what's the distance between the housing project and the center of the array? would say it's like 500 feet.
I can tell, it's not, the housing project on our plats is not delineated.
I know. From my driveway, I can see at least 5 of the houses right now because it's, all the hardwood leaves has fallen. And there are children there. Now, what happens, no matter where they put the fence, and it's off the ground so small animals can go through, can small children playing go under there? And who is going to be liable? I mean, is the builder going to be liable? Are you going to be liable because you're the commissioners approving this? I mean, the children can be hurt or killed in a project like this if they get inside the fence line. So I'm just asking you, who's going to be liable?
Well, it's certainly not a question we have the ability to answer here. I think I'd like the applicant to address their security fencing, but do you have other concerns too?
At this time, this is the only thing I have to bring up is like a loose end.
Sure.
I mean, yes, the children would be trespassing, but as a homeowner and a landowner, I know that if anybody comes out on my property, whether it's legit or not, if something happens to them, I'm liable. And I think that's about all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Is there any, is there anyone else who'd like to testify to this application? Okay, if you'd like to come forward, you can address any concerns that
We understand the concerns. Again, that's why there is fencing around this project. It's not, the fence is not going to be so far off the ground where kids can crawl underneath it. We're talking 3 inches is typically the space that we would leave under a fence for any animals to, crawl through. Also, the fence is designed, I believe, like a 4x4 square to allow those small animals to go through. Kids are not going to fit through a 4x4 square hole. If any kids were to get in there, they would have to climb a 7-foot tall fence to be able to get in there. Not to mention climbing that 7-foot fence, they would have to get through that landscaping area as well. And there's ditches and everything else that we're installing, which also would act as a deterrent. And all the electrical equipment is sealed inside the fence line.
Thank you. It's up here, I think, unless there's any other comments. They're looking for preliminary site plan approval. The staff has indicated they're fine with it with those conditions. What are your thoughts?
I come back to the landscaping and screening. I mean, I wish we had one out there that has been there 5 years. It looked like it's even 1/3 screened. We've got some of them sitting around in this county that, they're well over 5 years old that you could get, that screening that's provided doesn't do anything. The weeds are taller than most of the trees that have survived. So I just have a problem with no guarantees on when they're going to water them. I don't know how they're going to write that, but I think that's got to be tied down pretty good before they come back in here for final.
Question for staff on that, because it brings up sureties. You have, Mark, I guess.
Yes.
On other applications we've approved, and some of them have been pretty obvious, the landscaping is still insufficient. What does the sureties do for the public? How do we get activity from the applicant or the current owners of these projects?
Right, so what's required is a cost estimate of the material and installation. And then we're adding additional 10% to the landscaping above that amount. It's good for 3 years. They can receive 50% back after a certain period. And I think there's a clause in our land use ordinance, they're still responsible for maintenance and continued maintenance throughout the life of the project. The surety itself is to cover the cost of replacement. of any dying materials. So if the county were to have to intervene, they'd have those funds available. Typically, and I can't really say typically because it's the range of, or I guess the number of applications we're receiving is still pretty new. So you've not seen a lot of, at least I've not seen a lot of presentations of letters of credit, but that's a mechanism that we have.
Yeah, I understand the mechanism that's in place. How about the enforcement, I guess, is what I was asking.
I can sort of, maybe Carla could comment a little bit further in regards to Blue Star. So it was noticed that they were deficient in their plantings. Our code enforcement officers received a notification about that, and they've been addressed, and they are working on resolving that problem. So it's through our typical code enforcement activities.
Working on a meeting, they haven't planted any trees that I've seen, I guess.
I'm not sure where they're at in that process. Carla, I don't know if you're familiar with where they might be.
I don't want to hold up these applicants. I think
Sure.
it addresses the sureties a little bit, though.
Okay.
Go ahead. Holmes.
So your question as to how we decide if we're going to release a surety would be, so the landscaping is planted, we go do an inspection, that starts the clock for the time period. Typically, outside of solar projects, most landscaping is held for 2 years. So at the end of 2 years, person wants their letter of credit released, we go do another inspection. If the plants meet the survival standard, then the letter of credit can be released. If not, then they have to replant, and then that starts the 2-year clock all over again. So there is some protection. Many of the other solar facilities that are in the county, particularly the ones on the property owned by the county, did not have the same landscaping requirements that newer projects do have. So that's why their landscaping is not going to be
What about
at
the
all
sureties they
comparable.
provided for the landscaping they put in, though? Just what about that?
For the county,
No, I'm talking about the private individual.
what do you,
I'm- They had landscaping that
Right.
did not survive and has not been replaced.
then that means they probably haven't asked for their letter of credit back. We've had one recently that's come up that has been 10 years since they did the landscaping. This isn't solar, it was a subdivision. Landscaping did not survive. They're going to have to replant before we release that letter of credit. Once the letter of credit is released, then there's less we can do other than to kind of go out there and say, hey, you're not in compliance with your site plan, and you need to bring it into compliance and monitor it that way.
Or what? It's hard to hold you up, but it's this question, Bill brought up, it is a concern on
Right.
large projects.
If a letter of credit has been released and it is brought to our attention through a complaint that some aspect of the approved site plan is out of compliance, then we would contact the owner of the facility and work with them to bring it back into compliance.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm sorry to hold you up. You're not out of compliance yet, or at all. But just wanted, there's a question we had.
Yeah, I got a question. If the letter of credit goes away in 2 years, and then you say somebody has to complain, who is that person? Or isn't the county responsible, or somebody responsible within the governmental works to make sure that it's what they had guaranteed is going to happen, happens? Why do we have to wait? And it's not the first time I've heard this. You wait for a complaint.
Because we have two
If nobody
enforcement
complains,
officers.
then nothing happens.
We have 2 enforcement officers covering all of the unincorporated area of Kent County.
Enforcement in the county has typically been complaint-driven, just for the reasons that Carla said. We don't have the personnel to go out and inspect every property, so it's been complaint-driven.
Well, maybe something in this matter, because we do have, obviously, the other solar systems and everything else, solar panel systems and whatever, that are going to have this. Maybe there has to be some kind of requirement of those enforcement officers. I mean, the county's not that big. I mean, let's be realistic.
There's a request for a letter of credit release we might, maybe we do a quick inspection.
Oh, no,
before we release
we
the
certainly
credit.
do an inspection before any letters of credit are released. It's kind of after that time period that it would most likely need to be brought to somebody's attention that there's an issue. And I think your concern can certainly be addressed outside of the preliminary approval of this project.
Right, I understand that, I don't want to hold
No,
them
I
up.
know, I'm
but-
just saying-
But it is a concern on these projects, because we have not had great success in some of the others, from what we were told at approval. Thanks. Let's get back to 153 Mason Solar. Preliminary plan, subject to those conditions the staff delineated. What are our thoughts, and does someone want to make a motion for the applicant to proceed?
Joe, I'll speak up. It occurs to me that these guys have gone through the process of going to the Board of Appeals and have been responsive to both public and the Board of Appeals concerns and requirements for moving forward.
Okay.
And so I think they've done what we asked them to do. And so I would move that the commission approve the request for preliminary site approval per the staff recommendation, subject to the applicant submitting and obtaining approval for a vegetative management plan that addresses the requirements established in Article 6, Sections 11E through 11G of the Land Use Ordinance, submission and approval of a deed of forest conservation easement and agreement, approval of their erosion and sediment control and water management plans, stormwater management plans, submission and approval of sureties for sediment and erosion control and stormwater management, and submission and approval of sureties for landscaping maintenance and bond-related requirements for decommissioning as listed in Article 6, Section 11 of the Land Use Ordinance.
Thank you. We have a motion, have a second?
Second.
Second. Any comments or questions? I'll call the question for yea or nay. Jim Saunders?
Yay.
Ray Strong?
Yay.
Paul Ruge?
Yes.
Bill Crowding?
Yes.
Paula Reeder?
Yay.
And I'll vote with the affirmative. So we'll grant signing final or preliminary site plan approval. Thank you. Our next application is Wharf at Handy's Point, site plan, concept plan for boat storage area. Thank you, Carl.
The Wharf at Handy's Point Marina is proposing to construct a 2.8-acre out-of-water boat storage area on their 39-acre parcel, which is located at the end of Greenpoint Road near Wharton. The new storage area is estimated to have space for approximately 124 boats, and currently out-of-water boat storage utilizes the parking lot from the marina, and during the off-season, vehicular and pedestrian movement becomes dangerous and difficult, so this would create a separate area for boats from parking. The property is zoned marine, and this out-of-water boat storage is a permitted use. Staff notes that the proposed fence around the perimeter of the storage area will be 25 feet from Greenpoint Road, which is considered a side yard, and 125 feet from the rear property line. The storage area will be over 500 feet from Wharton Creek, and the security fence will be a 7-foot chain link fence with strands of barbed wire on the top for a total of 8 feet. For the district and environmental standards, staff notes that mitigation to meet the 10% water quality improvement standard has been provided. That mitigation plan was part of the approval by the Critical Area Commission for the granting of growth allocation to change the zoning to marine. Additional stormwater management will be approved by MDE, as this project requires a general permit for discharges of stormwater associated with construction activity, also known as Maryland General Permit Number 20-CP. Estimates and sureties along with the approved plans will be required for final site plan approval. As for landscaping, staff notes that the applicant is not proposing any new landscaping. There's an existing hedge of white pines and hardwoods along Greenpoint Road, and the existing forested buffer along Wharton Creek, and given the topography of the site, makes it a well-screened location. Mitigation will be required for the removal of several trees within the proposed storage area, and so staff is of the opinion that the existing vegetation is sufficient. The standards for site plan review. Staff notes that the proposal is consistent with strategies and goals of the comprehensive plan, that separating out-of-water boat storage from vehicular parking area will improve safety, that there are no known unreasonable demands on public services and infrastructure. Relocating the out-of-water boat storage area away from Wharton Creek should reduce risk of pollution to surface waters. There are no known undue disturbances caused by excessive or unreasonable noise, smoke, vapors, fumes, etc. Staff has recommended that a dumpster or other appropriate trash receptacle be included on the site plan. Sufficient parking is provided on the property. Already noted about the landscaping, that it is sufficient. Per the applicant, no decision has been made on installing lights. No information on proposed signs has been submitted. The proposed use is permitted and complies with setback requirements. And staff determined that a citizen participation meeting was not necessary given the location of the property and the nature of the proposed use. The following items are necessary for preliminary and final approval: approval of the MDE discharge permit and submission of lighting and sign details if proposed. No correspondence was received on this application.
Thank you. Is the applicant or their representatives here? Well, I want to raise your right hand. Is the testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Name and address for the records, please.
Buck Nickerson, Extreme Measures Land Surveyors, 23680 Ricketts Branch Road, Chestertown.
Chris Meyer, Wharf and Handy's Point, Greenpoint Road, Wharton.
Thanks. All right, what can you tell us about this application?
So I have some full-size copies of everything if you'd like to see some full-size copies. I also have a full-size aerial photo if any questions arise. I'm basically here to answer any kind of technical questions relating to the rules and regulations. Chris can answer any questions related to any kind of workings within the marina. I provided an exhibit of an aerial photo that showed a bunch of sailboats all jammed up on the existing parking lot, and that's what we're trying to avoid and trying to create a safer, more accessible area, and that's kind of really the whole basis to this portion of the application. We've addressed the fence detail. Since the technical advisory committee meeting, we have decided that we are going to do lighting in the parking lot. That would be dark sky compatible. We'll provide details on that when we come back. We'd like to come back in maybe March or April for preliminary final review. I'm working through the process with the MDE right now on receiving that NOI, as I call it. I think it's like a 20 CP form or something like that. I'm in touch with Dan Matson regarding the stormwater requirements, and I'm in touch with Robert Baldwin about the sediment control permits. Signage was mentioned. I was talking to Chris out in the parking lot. There's an existing sign there now that basically says Wharf at Handy's Point, no trespassing, and there's no additional signage approved or proposed.
We're using the same entrance, so the existing sign would be there.
So that's basically it, other than we'll address any kind of questions or concerns that you guys may have just to get us prepared when we come back for final or preliminary and hopefully final.
Okay. Questions for the applicant here or staff?
I have one question. This is intended to be solely a parking lot for boats, right?
Yes.
Is there any contemplation of additional construction of water-dependent facilities in this area?
No,
So it's basically a flat parking lot?
yes.
Okay. And how is it going to be paved? Or what's the surface?
3/4 inch bluestone.
Okay. Okay. That's all, thank you.
On the TAC, someone wanted the dark sky compatible lighting. Is that for year-round?
That's just a county standard, the dark sky compatible. And it basically, all it does is just shine down. It
Yeah, it just seems to me in the wintertime of that natural area that we shouldn't have any lights. There shouldn't be anyone in there. Just let it be dark. I understand when you're moving boats in the season, the fall, when you're.
If there's
work-
customers there at nighttime, we just want to make it safe.
I understand that. I
Enough to
just
make it safe,
concerned that it doesn't need to, we don't need even the dark sky compatible lighting in natural areas unless it was for a safety reason. But it's just boats sitting there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we want to be non-obtrusive as possible.
I know you do. You guys, you of all people, the
Yeah.
neighbors, but, okay. So, other questions? This is a concept. We don't vote on it, just offer opinions.
I was just curious, based on, how many boats do you have there now versus what's this going to allow you to expand to?
Right now, we're not trying to really expand our existing slip holders that we have down by the water. We're trying to move up to the hill. So we're not trying to really expand.
You're not increasing in customers or anything like that, you're just
No.
moving some around, getting a little higher?
Well, yeah, we always want to fill our slips and increase our customer base,
Right.
but we're not, we're trying to move what's existing up the hill. And we have enough for, how many slips?
Well, it's
do we have?
124 in the proposed area. And there's also other available parking over on the north side.
Just out of curiosity, you have the fence around it and whatever, but for security and safety, is there going to be operating hours? This is not going to be down by the wharf, so you're going to be up, kind of out of sight in a way. Is there going to be any control on people going in and out, or,
Currently, yes, there'll be a gate there. Currently, our slip holders have the combination to the gate, so they have access to their boat. And that's how we were planning on keeping it.
Just going to keep it that way?
Yeah,
Also, the marina manager lives on site. He
On site.
lives in an apartment above the office.
and we have security cameras, and he knows when people are in and out. He gets alerted.
And, you don't have too many close neighbors, so you don't have to, one concern would be somebody in there all night long with a light, granted, you're taking care of the dark lights, but
Correct. Yeah, like the marina managers
working
on
all
site.
night long or something.
Yeah, and we do, we kind of keep an eye on the area of, that road and that, down towards the marina. We have good neighbors on the farm side of it, so.
No, it is kind of out in a very rural area, and it's, just curious as far as what security would be.
Yes, just the managers in the area and the cameras, I would say, and the fencing.
Chris could pull you up a live view of marina right now from his phone if you like.
Yes,
huh?
but we kind of know most of the time where people are.
No, it's a good thing, unfortunately, in today's world. You got-
Yes.
Whenever I'm down there working, he texts me pictures of me walking with a piece of equipment over my shoulder back and forth.
You got to be watched, so.
Yeah, this is true.
Other questions?
I think it's good to getting all those boats up from the water, out of it, they're sitting there with them, working on them all winter or all spring, it's better to have it further away from the water, further better, so.
If the water gets that high, we're going to need a boat.
I would, the only comment I'd like to see, even with our ordinance, we consider having the lights being able to be turned off in times it's not used, and we don't need that lighting out there to affects insects and things like that. It's not necessary. I mean, maybe we have to have it, maybe it can be turned off in times.
Cable and electric.
Yeah,
Yes.
just for the wildlife habitat. I know you guys have good habitat out there, and it's a shame to ruin it with,
We would love that as well. We would definitely do that.
Carla's going like this? No. Okay, good. We care for the insects, Carla, come on. Anything else for them as they prepare a preliminary for next spring?
No, I think that place was right rough, a couple years ago. It's getting better all the time now, so, yeah.
Thank you, appreciate it.
We do
Thank
too.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Carl.
Our next application is, this is a general discussion. This is the Town of Galena annexation. Go ahead, Carl.
I can keep this really quick, and I know we do have a representative from the town here if you have questions. Galena has been, someone has submitted a request for annexation that the town is entertaining that would add 78 acres into the town limits. A portion of the property in question is already within the town. And as is noted in the staff report, the town has adequate water and sewer capacity. The Board of Education reports that the Galena Elementary School is not at capacity. The subject property is located off of two state highways, and access would be coming through roads that are already within the town, so should not affect county roads. The only county road bordering the property is Olivet Hill, which was resurfaced recently, and should the development need to come in off of that road, then it's probably adequate, at least at this time. And the town is proposing zoning designations of C2 commercial and R1 residential. There was in your packet, there is a sort of a concept of what has been proposed. We would note that it all seems to be consistent with goals and strategies in the comprehensive plan, and that staff recommends the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners regarding the town's request for a waiver of the 5-year rule for zoning, so that would allow the town to immediately rezone it and not have to wait 5 years and kind of keep it under the county's zoning.
I just wanted to add that some of the properties already
Yes.
in town, the total tract is a little over 100 acres, and it's roughly 102, roughly, I think, 25
and a half.
Can we wait and we'd love to get you up here. Thank you. And I should have noted, just because Tom represented to me earlier before the meeting, that he is a legal representative for the town of Galena, but he can still provide us legal advice without dwelling on this particular application. You want to raise your right hand? That's all right, unless you're an attorney. You don't. No. It's the truth. It's a testimony you've got to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
And your name and address, please.
Amber Engelbach, 110 East Cross, Galena, Maryland.
Thank you. What can you tell us about this request?
So we had our public hearing on Monday, and it was very interesting. We had a lot of mixed responses, some for and some against. A lot of the residents were more concerned with the adequate education that would be available for residents that, once there is the development, fire and police protection, all of which, we've been in contact with the fire department. They're more than happy, it's not going to be that much. So, if you have questions, I can answer them. I don't really.
Okay. Part of this is not in your a designated growth area, that part of?
Part of it is,
No.
you're correct, yes.
Yeah. Why is that, what's,
Because we didn't realize at the time when the comp plan was done that it was the same parcel. Otherwise, we would have included it, so we will have to amend that for the comp plan.
okay. And what's that zoned now?
It's R1, I believe, or agricultural, whatever it is. Let me look.
You know, what's the county
The
zone?
current part that's not in their growth area.
It's going to be rural character.
Yeah.
It is
Rural
rural character, okay. Which is what,
1 in 20.
20.
That's
So it'd be one.
that's what all the parcel is.
The whole part, okay. But the
That's,
other,
that's in the county, obviously.
in the county.
What's in the town has town zoning.
okay. Questions for the applicant?
When we were talking, or the county was talking at one time about running sewer out there at Olivet Hill, those people were, the residents out there, they were adamant that they didn't want water and sewer to run out there. If this is developed, I'm sure that's going to take place, they're not just going to run it to this residential area, they're going to have to take all Olivet Hill in too, and I just wonder what, the residents out there would think about that.
What is your sewer capacity now for?
I believe it's 150 more residents, but as far as that particular lot on Olivet Hill, there is no plans to extend the water and sewer to the other side of that pond. They would have to be on well. So on that rural character, on the part that's not included in the comp plan,
They would not have water and sewer?
no, they would have to be on well water. So that would be something else. I mean, we haven't gone that far as to,
So in order to develop, it all have to be perked and,
I believe so.
The developer is considering putting some larger lots on
Yes,
that portion, maybe some farmette type of lots that because it, well and septic, so they would be larger lots.
but they would be zoned for single family or?
Correct.
I had the benefit of a presentation made to the Economic Development Commission by the mayor, which was pretty exciting. It addresses, this annexation addresses a lot of critical issues that we're facing in the county relative to the availability of housing and affordable housing and management of the cost of delivering water and sewer to individual households. This would spread the cost a little further, as far as I can tell. So I know that the town is very interested in providing for those kind of opportunities. At least the mayor's made it clear that that's his goal. And to do it, to have the opportunity to do it sooner than later makes sense to me. So I think we should approve their request for a recommendation to the commissioners that the 5-year timeframe be waived for proceeding.
Did you have anything else? I want to, we haven't had the public yet. You want to go ahead, Jim? You go ahead.
Go ahead. Ask the public.
Yeah, is there anyone, there's no one, anyone in the public would like to speak to this application or request by the town of Galena? Okay, go ahead, Jim.
I was reading the request, and your request indicates that Galena like to grow
Yes.
and become a big part of Kent County. And from what I'm seeing here, and what I've read, and what your developer is offering to help and everything in this thing, this is a great idea. it's time for the county or part of the county to grow.
It is, you're correct. I completely
And
agree.
I agree with Paul that, I don't see anything wrong with this. And one of the most important things is, if you don't grow, then Galena Middle School is gonna be closed down
Correct,
also.
yeah.
So if you get this opportunity and they presented all this, what I read here, if we could get that opportunity, if Lena could get that, and I agree with, Paul, sure, we should pass the waiver for you to start that work.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim. Anyone else? Hearing none, we have a request to the county commissioners from the town of Galena to waive the 5-year rezoning rule so they could annex the above proposed lands. Entertain a motion.
I move that the commission recommend to the county commissioners a waiver of the 5-year rezoning term to permit immediate action by the town to accomplish the goal of annexation.
Thank you. I have a second.
I said,
Okay. Any discussion?
I just,
Go ahead.
I would like to see, before you waive the 5-year rule, I'd like to see what was going to go out there. I mean, we don't know how many duplexes they're planning on or how many single-family residences are going out there. So how are we going to determine what effect that has on existing infrastructure?
So we
And
actually,
what effects that's going to have on the taxpayers of the county who, if we have to upgrade the infrastructure, who's going to pay for it? Is there going to be an agreement with the developer that they pay for the sewer and water running out there, or the road maintenance? When I go through that red light before I get to Olivet Hill Circle, that's a pretty rough road right now, just based on the traffic that is generated on it. That's my only concern. We don't know. How many duplexes can you put on?
10.
10.5 acres. That's my only question.
Okay. Any further discussion? Call the question. Paula Reeder?
Aye.
Bill?
No.
Paul Ruge?
Aye.
Ray Strong?
Aye.
Jim Saunders?
Aye.
And I'll vote for the majority. So we'll send a recommendation to the county commissioners for this application.
okay.
Thank you.
Do you want me to answer his questions? Because I can't.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. If you.
So because we haven't received, what?
I'll hold you to this.
You can. We don't have a, dead set like a site plan for what's going where. It was discussed at the meeting with the developer that rather than having duplex housing, that we would do townhouses instead. And it's roughly about 140 units that we would be putting on that area, which is well within the comp plan for the water and sewer and stuff.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Is that it? We're done?
I think
You're
that's
done?
it.
Okay, I'm fine,
That's it. You have to convince the county commissioners now.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Our next agenda item is our 2023 annual report to the Maryland Department of Planning. Go ahead, Carla.
Better late than never. And as Bill likes to point out, there are some counties that do not do an annual report. This is our standard form letter that the Maryland Department of Planning requires to they keep track of the new residential permits that are issued and sort of how many are in the priority funding areas and aren't. They ask us to report on text amendments, annexations, anything like that. So that's what that first page is the standard form letter. You can see that in 2023, we had permits for 35 new dwellings, and 9 of those were in the priority funding areas. The second page that you have is our mid-year, our mid-cycle, 5-year mid-cycle report for the comprehensive plan. Bill and I have talked to you about this maybe back in the summer. Kind of, did you think the comprehensive plan was still where it needed to be? Were we still working to implement it? Was it still appropriate? And that's kind of what we have summarized in these paragraphs here. Again, we kind of showed some cumulative data on new houses, permits over the previous 5 years, and talk some about the rezoning process that we've been going through and how that was part of one of the things in the 2018 comprehensive plan, and talk some about the things that we continue to be challenged by, kind of to balance agricultural preservation with the need for economic development, and talk some about utility scale solar. Include some information about the Millington growth area and the application for the warehouses that has been submitted, and then a little bit about what some of the other communities are doing. So I don't know if you have any questions.
I have one question. The last sentence, as legacy employers leave has occurred in recent years, whether new employees located in the county would like to decide if optimism for future growth can be sustained. I guess that doesn't account for all the growth in jobs we've had in this county. I mean, tremendous growth. Talkie's tripled, John Deere's doubled, and there's others. I mean, Gillespie's added people out there. It's so, and it seems like, and I don't know the legacy employees that leave. I know Lamont's moved some stuff out, but there are others. It seems, that I know some of the warehouses or stores, the stuff up at in Chestertown may have the Wisco and those things, but I don't know that. I guess what I see as legacy employers in this county, they're still here.
Okay.
Dixon,
So
Gillespie.
you're saying you'd like to see.
Yeah, and I
You
don't
want a
think,
little more positive spin on this sentence.
I wouldn't call it spin, I call it fact. I mean, I think you don't account for, you see what some of these, the parking lots are full of these companies, and there's signs up for more. So I guess would be my concern is the tone, not that it's just
Sure.
spin.
We will take another look at that and kind of give you a chance, an opportunity to take a look at it before sending this off to the county commissioners.
Anyone else have questions, comments? Go ahead.
They had a whole list, obviously, in this letter of planning initiatives that apparently the Office of the Secretary has an interest in. Is there any plan to address any of these areas of planning topics going forward?
I think that is a conversation that you as the Planning Commission could have. If there are directions or things you would like to propose to the county commissioners be worked on.
Fair enough. Okay.
Thank you. Our next item is as the agenda says, a courtesy presentation by LRK Inc., updating and general information about Millington Crossing for the Planning Commission. Present. Come forward. Yeah, come forward, certainly. So this isn't a application, so we don't need to testify. We just hear discussions. I would, based on legal counsel, we need to be concerned not to debate projects. You can listen and we look forward to their presentation, and we'll allow the public to ask questions too, but likely some of this would come back to us in the form of an application, so we better just listen.
So I'm Russ Richardson of Richardson Properties, and I'm here on behalf of the Millington Crossing Project. And with me is Jim Constantine of Looney Rick's Kiss. And considering everything that's transpired in the county in the last couple of years, going back to the charrette in '22 and the rezoning more recently, we thought it would be a respectful thing to come and make a presentation to you and to update you on the progress we've made in terms of developing concepts and regulations that might be applied to the growth area. So with that brief introduction, I'm going to let Jim go ahead with a presentation. At the end, if you have any questions, which you might have at the end of his presentation or later, I'd certainly be glad to floor those questions. And we're certainly glad to give you a printed copy of the presentation for review later that might bring other thoughts and questions to you. So with no more further ado, I'm going to turn Jim loose.
I wanted to be able to see it here, so I wasn't craning my neck to point to things that I can. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I've appeared at some of your meetings previously, virtually, I think a couple of times in the past. So I'm a principal planning with LRK. We're architects and planners. We have about 7 offices around the country. I'm actually based out of our Orlando, Florida office these days. I wanted to share this update, as Russ said, that really focuses on the county growth area. I think some of the discussion I heard on the prior to matters before the board. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So this is the county growth area. Looking to the northeast, Route 301 is the area that was identified, the Route 301 corridor. The areas that you see just north of Route 291, River Road, in pink are areas that Richardson Properties has acquired. There are some other areas shown in light purple. In total, this area is more than a square mile. It's quite large. You see the town of Millington off in the distance and the Chester River running through the right. Today, at this intersection where the food line is located, folks may go there, but often folks are getting on Route 301 to actually travel to other areas to get a whole series of daily needs. And this is an opportunity in this growth area, as the county has designated it, to really grow locally and grow in a way that's special. So just as a quick update, you designated this as a growth area in the 2018 comp plan for commercial, industrial, mixed uses with regulatory flexibility. The location has also been selected for a wastewater treatment plant, and this idea of having a location for managed smart growth, which will increase tax revenues to the county, coupled with infrastructure, has allowed the county to apply for state funding for the wastewater treatment plant, because it really is sort of a poster child of how to plan for and do smart growth and plan for the infrastructure with development and to serve it. And the infrastructure in terms of the wastewater treatment plant also has a benefit in terms of improving the water quality of the Chester River from what the current plant is doing. And then the county zoning map was adapted. Actually, the area was zone mixed use earlier in 2024. The county adopted the new zoning map in 2024. And then just two things about that. the mixed-use zoning requires that when development finally comes in, that there is a district-wide mixed-use master plan coupled with development design standards that would regulate that. And part of that would involve taking regulations from different parts of the land development ordinance. Historically, the county's ordinance, and this was something that was in the diagnostic report by your zoning consultant a couple of years ago, was really single-use zones where one use on one property. Here we have a situation where we're really looking to have multiple uses that may be on the same property or even vertically integrated. So the county ordinance was really never designed for that, so there's going to be a need to basically provide for a set of applicable regulations that would come in with a district-wide master plan to specially treat this area and make sure it's developed right. One of the things that we're here to share today is something that was suggested to us at the 2022 Millington Growth Area Planning Workshop. We did a 3-day workshop at the Firehouse in Millington. Some of y'all may have been there. We had residents that were involved as well. We had an evening presentation. And one of the ideas that came out of that was a recommendation that we prepare Millington Crossing design guidelines that really tried to respect and reflect Millington in what might be happening out at the interchange. And this was to guide design and planning, but also as a supplementary tool for regulatory review. So it's something that you all may be looking at as well at some point. I should also just note that this is not required. So this was something that we were doing above and beyond. It's not required in the ordinance for mixed-use development, but it's really trying to set tone for what might happen out here. In terms of accommodating this diverse mix of uses, that again, I said the county regulations historically were not designed for, as I indicated by your zoning consultant, this will allow for more environmentally sound and sustainable development because we can begin to bring things together, make them walkable and connected. We're going to share some ideas about creating an incredible network of preservation corridors, woodlands, parks, and parkways. We think there's a green possibility here that's quite incredible. And the mixed use also would allow in developing at some higher intensities by moving things close to one another versus having everything separated and isolated and sprawl. Mixed use is really part of the smart growth toolbox, which also makes a more efficient use of land with the sewer plant coming. And most importantly, the tone of what this document that we're going to share with you all after this is that it creates compatible community character, both at the town scale and for the rural county with what might be happening in Millington Crossing. So we actually include in this document, which copy right here, and we'll share with you all digitally in the near future. Really first starts with understanding that Millington, as our closest neighbor, has had 2 centuries of buildings. There's a range of styles and different building types and different patterns and some design vocabulary, and we tried to distill some of the essential elements out of that into this document. Let me step back to kind of the overall planning. I mentioned that there's this incredible green opportunity. So on the map here, you can see Route 301 at the left, River Road at the bottom. The food line is indicated at the left there, right below and part of this Kent County growth area. And then the yellow lines, the dashed line, the first one is a half mile, and the second one is 1 mile. So there's about 1.5 miles from the interchange to the center of Millington, but this growth area really touches up against it. From the beginning, we looked at this area and started with a green-first approach. We looked at the Chester River, which is down there at the bottom, and over in the town of Millington, even though we didn't have lands there, the Edmonds Creek, the Cypress Branch, which run up from it, and then across at the far left, at the edge of the properties that Mr. Richardson had assembled, there's the Mill Branch, because actually we've done tons of research and it has both names in different reference documents. And then you can see the county growth area. By looking at the green, which is floodplains and wetlands, that follows the blue, and environmental planners like to call this blue-green planning, you start to see where you absolutely don't want to build. You also see in green the network, the framework, I should say, for a potential network of interconnected green space, and also where you don't see any color, and a large part of that is right there in the Kent County designated growth area, is where development should be located, where it's not constrained and where the land is good. And the big idea that really came out of this from the beginning when Mr. Richardson saw this land and started to acquire it was that we could connect these green systems together, and you see that dashed arrow called Millington Crossing Parkway across the site, with some sort of a linear park that would connect the interchange area to the town, knit everything together. So it's a big idea that you're going to see represented in this document in terms of some of the things that we'd like to try to do. This is the evolving framework plan that has changed as more information has been gathered since 2017. It's sort of a concept framework for Millington Crossing. It encompasses what you see in color, is the mixed use area out there. There are green elements that I'll explain in a little more detail in upcoming slides in terms of parks and parkways. There's connectivity. We're not showing local roads, but we are showing some intent in terms of how some key roads, collector type, might go across. We thought through trails, which would be part of the connectivity and part of accessing this whole park system that we think is possible, this incredible green experience. And there's some preliminary land use that's indicated. We've even shown in blue down there on River Road, the kind of Robin's Egg blue is a potential school site that we think could be knit within the whole parkway system and create something incredible. These planning principles, they're really attempting to create, on top of the preserved natural corridors, which includes the Mills Branch corridor, by the way. We've talked about preserving extensive width through there. It's not buildable, but we think it also should become publicly accessible, and potential for trails on the west side of Route 301. On through the rest of the site, we've come up with a concept that Mr. Richardson has advocated from the beginning for these special parkways. And connecting parkways will really be the hallmark of Millington Crossing. They're both elements that are gateway elements, they're connectivity elements. The images that you see there, they're parkways that can run along park space. That park space may be on one side, in other cases there may be median treatments, nice promenades along them, trails wrapping along them. And I'll show you that in a little bit more detail. And again, everything that we're at here is at conceptual level. We're not presenting a plan, we're just sharing kind of the updated thinking to date for as plans will be developed in the growth area here. So at the far left there, again, running up and down is Route 301. On the west side of 301 are the Everton parcels there against the Mills Branch. On the right side, you begin to see some things like a parkway, the two dashed black lines with green through the middle going to a roundabout coming in from Howard Johnson's Road. Then an interconnecting street from Carroll Clark Road at the top down to the food line. We call that the Carroll Clark Road extension. And then a green spine that would be both road and parkway, the classic definition of the parkway when they were developed by the landscape architect Kessler in Kansas City, worked a lot in Kansas City, which is the birthplace of the U.S. parkways concept. It was the way to the park, and they were part of parks. They were lined with parks. In some cases, they developed parks. And so we're bringing elements of that, applying that here. And if we look at some of the, what I described as these parkways, you see some of them with the dashed black lines lined with green. I wanted to just share sort of the little bit more detail what we have been studying in terms of the street sections for this hallmark of Millington Crossing. On these sections, you can see on the top one there on the far left, there's the furthest thing over is an 8-foot trail. Then it becomes two different one-way legs of the road with a median in the center. On the right is a section which actually shows a wider trail on the left, sidewalk on the right. The road is just contained in the middle without a median. So we have different conditions for how this would apply on the site. And this is a photograph example of separated lane, the landscape median. It's not exactly what we're proposing here, but it is in terms of some of the character. Trail is along the edge on the right side. There's a sidewalk on the other side. And also, in terms of this being complete streets, notice the attention to detail for the pedestrian, and that was in our sections as well, for the crosswalk, which comes across, hits the median. That's called a safe refuge island, which creates safety for anyone crossing the road, which is very important. Now, if we were to apply this in our plan, where I showed you previously, what we're thinking at Howard Johnson Road, there's 301 at the bottom, Howard Johnson Road, there's the auto repair business, which had a lot more cars around it when I passed it earlier today. Just a little bit to the north of that here, where we just outlined schematically this idea of creating from this point in, from Howard Johnson Road, this parkway entrance, which comes into, in the far distance there, the Carroll Clark Road extension, a roundabout, and then that parkway continues across the property. And that roundabout may be something that's dimensioned and similar to this. This is an example from one in Carmel, Indiana. We worked there quite extensively. It's actually been called the community with the greatest number of roundabouts in the United States. The mayor is very proud of it. They're very proud of it. They do an incredible, but you can also see that as a green element and as a parkway design element, how the roundabout pairs great parkway and this whole notion of a linear park system. The design principles for additional parks and open spaces that we have in this document include for parks and squares, pocket parks, plazas, gets into some of the details, but it's more of a principle based about design features, having shade. Also the opportunity here to have common stormwater management, which offers the ability to really advance green design and resiliency versus having a whole of stormwater management on every individual site. So again, a little look and a little more detail at our framework plan, and I wanted to call attention to the area that's in the white box. You see Food Lion at the left. The blue asterisk on the right is the proposed wastewater treatment plant along River Road. And I'm going to go to a little zoom in for a concept that has been evolving here as we've been looking at what the county is going to do with the wastewater treatment plant, shown on the right, Food Lion at the left. You know, today Food Lion sits in isolation, which is not the ideal situation for the business, for citizens, or for the environment. And by that I mean that in most cases you find that groceries anchor more retail around it, which is great for the smaller businesses. It's also great because people like to do multiple things when they go shopping in terms of serving their daily services. So think about all the things that you go elsewhere for that we thought there's an opportunity to actually extend the Food Lion, kind of keep alignment with its facade and its setback. You see a little square off of, just to the right of the Food Lion there, we're actually looking at the notion of some public space, and we're continuing the green space from between the Food Lion parking lot and River Road, across the front of this area between River Road and what we call Parkview Lane. The buildings that are fronting it could be used for any variety of retail, service, office, food and beverage. And again, think about all the things that could go well here that we go elsewhere for today. Pizza, the sandwich shop, the juice bar, restaurants, the barber shop, the hair salon, the dentist, the optician, all these other things that normally occur close to a grocery store that would allow for one-stop shopping, but also from an environmental standpoint, it allows for people to come here, park once, and then walk to do several different things. And the parking that's shown here would be a blend of both on-street parking on Parkview Lane, and we think some on the Carroll Clark Road extension, and shared parking behind these buildings. Again, it's not developing everything as its own separate property. It's really trying to mix it together into an experience. The wastewater treatment plant is shown on the right, where it will be partially buffered by the wooded lines that you see to the right wrapping along River Road. That's kind of an ideal location for, I think, the county has studied for discharge. And this little cluster of extension of commercial mixed use, which could even have potentially apartments upstairs. We don't know that the market will support that. Also help shield the wastewater treatment plant from view. So in combination with the existing wooded areas and buffering that will be required behind it, this all comes together. So the guidelines then go on to talk about what the character might be as this sort of development occurs. And we have some pages in there that have mixed-use commercial guidelines that really try to set the tone for mixed use and commercial development, having some usable open space, as I discussed, we have in that concept, how to minimize large exposed parking lots, which we try to do in that conceptual diagram that we have there, and then the scale of types of buildings that might occur. This is more of a pattern book of possibilities. It's not specific to any design, and again, it's something that's being done to try to tie it into the character of a town versus what you often see at these highway interchanges, which is just very large, big box, anonymous suburban development that you can find anywhere in any place. We also then build on that with some more details on the commercial guidelines, everything from building compositions to frontage types that include different ways that buildings could engage together. You see photos of historic Millington buildings and some of the key images on the right as we kind of take that typology and kind of abstract out the key elements of it in the diagrams that you see drawn next to them. We then actually even go into signage types and have a variety of awning, window, wall, sandwich board, hanging post, and ground-mounted signs that we think all reflect pedestrian character and not typical sprawl-type development. They should be designed at human scale, not at the scale of an automobile driving 50 miles an hour. Or we hope that that will be the case here at Millington Crossing. So then just switching to the plan again, I had mentioned previously that some of the areas that you see in sort of the brick color are ones that we think will be commercial. So Food Lion, the area we just showed you. Some of the striped areas are ones that we're not sure at this point. Some type of mixed use, could be office, could be residential. And in yellow, we think areas that probably will be residential connecting towards the town, the future school site with a park and a trail down off of River Road, connecting into Millington so that the school could serve both. If this development perhaps had occurred earlier, the former Millington Elementary School may have been able to be saved. This also includes within those yellow areas safe walkable streets in the neighborhoods. And we have design principles, how to lay these streets out at a human scale, how to ensure that there are sidewalks and street trees with a planting strip. They're slow-moving streets, that they're safe. Also the integration of open space into the neighborhoods, making it highly visible and accessible as focal points. Orientation for homes to the street in terms of how they relate to streets or open space. Some direction and principles for blocks and lots, corner lots, terminating views. Those are key lots that sit at the end of the street are important. Also in terms of residential character, some patterns that could respect and reflect the character found in the town of Millington. Forms like the projecting porch, the engaged porch, the stoop. These are sort of archetypal definitions that are used or terminology that's used for those, but they're all examples that we're showing at the right that you can find right there we did in Millington. Principles about orienting the house to the street, having entries facing the street, and some basic principles on massing and regulation. We're almost done here. We also included some principles to deal with large industrial and large-scale buildings. And some of those have to deal with, if you have a large-scale building, and we think this could take place with the sewer plant, perhaps using a barn or agrarian-type form would make it blend in with the character, the rural character of the county. And if you actually look at where the county's public works, its collection of buildings are that type of agrarian shed and barn buildings. So we hope the wastewater treatment plant will have that. Trying to retain existing vegetative buffers for these larger scale buildings, and then intensify the landscape screening where these are either adjacent to residential or to public roads. And then lastly, we have some other details regarding signage and stormwater, which I did discuss before, but part of the stormwater is really designing and landscaping it so that the basins blend in with the rural character of the county, trying to use more natural approaches where possible, and designing the stormwater detention as a recreation and aesthetic feature where possible. So in wrapping up on next steps, the county will be advancing the design and complete funding of the new wastewater treatment plant. Again, that's being done by the county, not by us, but it is on land that Mr. Richardson has provided. The landowners will continue to market development parcels in this mixed-use area. At the moment, there's no need to go too far until the wastewater treatment plant catches up, but there is an increased level of interest by developers who want to become part of the special story here at Millington Crossing and be part of Kent County. There will be a district master plan and then the whole mixed-use development standards that I referenced earlier that will be coming in to you for review before development. And then the growth area developers, we hope will continue to explore opportunities to reinvest in the improvement in the town of Millington, because what happens here affects Millington, and we hope that there can be a positive outcome and the economic activity can benefit everyone. That's what we have for an update today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So let me wrap this up. This is a lot of concepts and detail and new regulation to throw at you at once. And so I think maybe the best thing is we provide you with copies of this, and it's something you can study and consider and give input on as this moves forward to a further level of formalization in terms of regulatory documents. If you have any questions right now, I'm very glad to answer them. Jim, you got a 3 o'clock call. You got
That's okay. I can answer some
conference
questions
call.
here.
So he has to excuse himself. This ran a little later than we thought it would. But if there's any questions right now, I'd be glad to try and answer them. Otherwise, I'd wait to hear back from you after we've sent you copies of the documents.
Well, since you made I requested if there's any questions from the public at all. We really shouldn't ask questions here because.
I have to walk back because I'm very hearing impaired.
Do you need this on the record, or can you?
No, this is a discussion. It's a courtesy.
I think one of my questions is, this is land that's going to be annexed by Millington. Where are they?
They were invited,
They were invited,
yes.
but they're not here?
They're not
And you
here.
haven't made a presentation directly to them?
No, they were invited to come to this presentation.
Okay.
I had discussions with them about having a presentation with them, yes.
Okay. And the other thing is this, as it develops, and you get all of this activity, retail and everything else where people are going to come and shop, what happens to downtown Millington?
What's there now?
There's a dollar store, there's a nice little Hispanic restaurant, and also a new little grocery store in the pharmacy. There's a liquor store, there's a couple of other things. There's a marijuana business going on.
That's great.
But they could use more. And if you
There's no space there to build more. There are existing buildings. On the main street, if you look, there's no opportunity. We evaluated very carefully.
But there's buildings there that could be repurposed.
Pardon?
There's buildings there that could be repurposed.
You know, one of the problems with, and I think I'd like to say this to everyone here, I see a lot of people who don't really understand architecture and buildings, trying to salvage old buildings and repurpose them for uses where the buildings really don't fit. If we look at development today, it's very prototypical. You know, a certain restaurant has a certain building they build for a reason, because it's efficient. A hotel builds a building with certain widths and certain lengths of corridors that are a product of responsiveness to codes. So the small buildings of Millington will not work for a drugstore of today. Those buildings are larger. So there are certain things that used to be in Millington that have gone away because it wasn't critical mass of population. And the replacement buildings for that use will be larger than those older buildings were because of a larger population. There was a drugstore there, but that went away. A new drugstore would be larger than that because of the new population that's coming to this growth area. So we look to working with the town of Millington, and I would say they haven't been particularly cooperative. And I've confronted them with this, and I'm not going to talk further about them, but we try to work with local communities. That's part of it. Our goal was to annex into the town. And I've met with them, and I've told them at this time, I don't see us doing that. And I don't want to get publicly into the reasons for that here, because I don't think it's appropriate. But our vision initially was that we belonged annexed into the town. But you need a cooperative element to annex in. And overly restricted zoning ordinances, which they proposed to us at the charrette, are not what you need here. You need more controlling ordinances. There's several types of zoning ordinances. One is like what would be appropriate in Chestertown, where you have a very mature community with only maybe 10, I've studied the 10 infill sites in the town. Well, you have to be very considerate of what happens and what the impact is on your neighbor. That's one kind of ordinance that needs to be very restrictive. But when you're dealing with roughly 700 acre growth area, and it's all new development, you can be careful what uses you put next to one another. But the ordinance doesn't need to be as restrictive as the ordinance that you would use in an existing community. So, the ordinance that was passed by the county, in our vision, is very appropriate, where what the county is really trying to do is attract tax ratables because of the predominance and the, 89% zone farmland, they have a tax problem. And that tax problem goes back to the assessment laws of Maryland, which are very low for farmland. So, I guess I said enough.
Was there any more questions?
Pardon?
I should say, are there any more questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Staff reports. First off, Bill, I hope you're feeling better if you're still listening.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Get some rest.
Just something really quickly. So the January meeting would fall on January 2nd. And we wanted to see if you had any desire to bump that into the next week.
Yes.
I don't know that there's going to be much on the agenda, but that we will then publish the date for being, I guess it'd be what, January 9th. So,
Good.
thank you very much.
Mark, anything? Rob, anything? No? Beth? Hearing none, go ahead, yeah.
I just have a question. Carla, we're getting on, we're going to get more and more of these utility scale coming in. At what point, or what is the determining factor for them not to be an incidental use to the farm? I mean, I have a hard time with that. I just think, I can't see a piece of property that has no buildings on it at all, and this being incidental. But it looks to me like you're basing it on acreage of tillable land and how much these utility scale systems are eating up as to whether that's an incidental use or not. And that's one of the requirements of the board, and I have a tough time wrestling with that.
I think the board has a tough time wrestling with that as well. And it does come down to sort of what other agricultural uses are being put to, on the property. And so, yes, it does tie into the acreage. That, of course, the incidental to the farm is really only going to be applicable to the smaller utility scale systems that go for the special exception. The systems that are larger than that, that go before the Public Service Commission, they're being kind of reviewed on a different set of standards, so.
I would rather see the Agricultural Advisory Board make that determination as to whether it's incidental. Myself, I think when we were talking about all this years ago, we were thinking it was going to be, someone had a dairy farm that ate up a lot of electricity, and that solar field was incidental to that use, but to sit there and just my opinion with trying to wrestle with it, I don't see where a piece of property that has not one thing on it generating 1 kilowatt of electricity or 1 watt of electricity even, how that system is incidental to that farm, and it's that farm, not saying, well, I got a house up the road on a farm that's going to benefit from the electric. It says, their ordinance says that farm, and I just have a tough time with it.
Well, as I noted, the Board of Appeals also has a tough time.
Yeah, I've listened to that meeting. It really is tough.
All good points.
That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?